I'm Stephanie Mitchell, 32, and last Saturday my peaceful morning coffee ritual shattered with aggressive pounding on my apartment door. There stood my mother Diane and brother Ryan wearing identical entitled expressions. Mom's first words cut like glass. "We know how much you're making now." My stomach dropped. I'd escaped our financially turbulent childhood, built my own success as a software engineer. Now they were here uninvited. "You need to give us what we deserve after all we've done for you," Mom demanded, hand outstretched. That's when I realized this wasn't a simple family visit, this was an ambush. Before I dive into my story, where are you watching from today? If you're enjoying this kind of real-life family drama, hit that like button and subscribe to catch more stories just like this one. Now let me take you back to how this nightmare began. I grew up in a small town outside Minneapolis, Minnesota, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Our modest three-bedroom house always needed repairs with its peeling paint and creaky floors. When I was 9, my father walked out the door after a particularly explosive argument with my mother and never returned. Not even a goodbye. Just the memory of a slamming door and my mother's hysterical crying. After that, Mom was left to raise Ryan and me alone. At least that's how she always framed it. "I sacrificed everything for you kids" became her daily mantra, usually followed by a deep, martyred sigh. What became clear almost immediately was that in my mother's eyes, Ryan could do no wrong. He was 4 years younger than me, with the same sandy blonde hair and blue eyes that my father had. Maybe that's why she favored him so openly. "Boys need extra attention," she'd say, when I questioned why Ryan never had chores while my list grew longer. "He's sensitive," she'd explain, "when he broke my science project the night before it was due. He's just expressing himself when he threw tantrums well into his teens." While Ryan was coddled, I learned early that I needed to fend for myself. By 14, I was babysitting neighborhood kids to buy my own school supplies. By 16, I was working weekends at the local grocery store to save for college. My grades never slipped below an A despite my work schedule, because I knew education was my ticket out. "You and your fancy college dreams," Mom would scoff. "What were not good enough for you." She never attended my academic awards ceremonies or college fairs. Meanwhile, Ryan's mediocre baseball games were family events that couldn't be missed. When senior year came around, I applied for every scholarship I could find. The guidance counselor at school, Mrs. Reynolds, became my greatest advocate. She stayed late to help me with applications and wrote glowing recommendation letters. When I received a partial scholarship to the University of Washington, Mom's response was telling Seattle, "That's so far away. Who's going to help me with Ryan?" College wasn't the escape I'd hoped for, at least not financially. My scholarship covered tuition, but little else. I worked 2 jobs, mornings at a campus coffee shop and evenings waiting tables while carrying a full course load in computer science. Meanwhile, Ryan dropped out of community college after 1 semester, claiming it was too stressful. Mom never questioned it. He tried again at a technical school, lasting 3 months before deciding it wasn't his thing. Then, a 3rd attempt at a different community college ended when he didn't connect with the professors. Each time Mom defended him, "He just hasn't found his passion yet." During those college years, Mom's calls always centered around 2 themes: how difficult things were without me, and how selfish I was for not sending more money home. Never mind that I was surviving on ramen and working 30 hours a week while maintaining my GPA. "Ryan needs new clothes for job interviews," she'd say, though the jobs never materialized. The car broke down again, though Ryan always seemed to have transportation to parties. When I graduated with honors with my computer science degree, neither of them attended the ceremony. "It's too expensive to travel," Mom claimed, though they'd gone to Florida the month before because Ryan needed a break. After graduation, I accepted a junior developer position in Seattle. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it was stable and, most importantly, it was nearly 3,000 miles from the guilt and manipulation. For the next 7 years, I built my career methodically. Entry-level developer to mid-level, then senior, each step accompanied by salary increases and greater responsibility. I kept contact with my family, minimal holiday calls, occasional texts, a birthday card with a small check for Ryan that I knew Mom would cash. 3 months ago, everything changed. After leading a successful project that saved the company millions, I was promoted to senior developer with a significant salary increase. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just financially stable, I was thriving. I posted a subtle celebration on Instagram, just a picture of champagne and the Seattle skyline with the caption, "Level up, number new beginnings." I never thought that simple post would bring the past crashing back into my carefully constructed life. "Are you going to leave us standing in the hallway all day?" Mom pushed past me into my apartment, Ryan trailing behind her like a sullen shadow. The scent of her familiar floral perfume, too strong, always too strong, filled my living space, instantly transporting me back to childhood confrontations. I reluctantly closed the door, watching as Mom surveyed my apartment with narrowed eyes. It wasn't extravagant by any means, a one-bedroom in a decent Seattle neighborhood with clean, modern furniture. But through her envious gaze, I could see she was cataloging every item as evidence of my supposed wealth. "Well, well, well," she said, running her finger along my bookshelf. "Looks like someone's doing very well for herself while her family struggles." Ryan immediately flopped onto my sofa, muddy shoes and all, and grabbed the remote. "Nice TV. What is this? Like 65 inches?" He turned it on without asking, flipping channels carelessly. "Cables for old people. You should get streaming services." "I have those too," I said reflexively, then regretted giving him the information. "Look, this is a surprise. Why are you here?" Mom sat primly on my armchair, her purse clutched tightly in her lap like she was afraid I might steal it. The irony wasn't lost on me. "We've been keeping tabs on you," she said, a small, satisfied smile playing on her lips. "LinkedIn is quite informative. Senior developer at Technova Solutions. According to Glassdoor, that position pays between $130,000 and $165 0 inches Seattle, plus bonuses." She emphasized the last word, raising her eyebrows. My stomach tightened. I'd never told them my salary, deliberately keeping my financial life private. "You've been researching my career." "Family keeps track of family," she said dismissively. "And speaking of family, it's time you remembered yours." From her purse, she pulled out a folded piece of paper and smoothed it on my coffee table with deliberate slowness. I approached cautiously, already dreading what I'd see. It was a list meticulously typed and formatted. Ryan's business investment, $5, 0000. Urgent opportunity closing soon. Mom's credit card debt, $8, 0000. Affecting credit score. Family vacation home down payment, $20, 000. Location, TBD. Family vote. Monthly family support, $1, 500. Beginning immediately. I stared at the paper, momentarily speechless. The total was nearly $35, 000 upfront plus ongoing monthly payments. "What is this?" I finally managed, my voice strained. "It's what you owe," Ryan said from the couch, not bothering to look away from the TV. "You know, for family." "I don't owe you anything," I said, the words coming out sharper than I intended. "And what business investment? You've never successfully run anything." Ryan finally looked at me, his face darkening. "It's a cryptocurrency opportunity. Not that you'd understand." Mom jumped in before I could respond. "Stephanie, after everything I sacrificed for you, raising you alone, keeping a roof over your head, all those years of struggle, this is how you repay me, by hoarding your wealth." "Hoarding my wealth," I echoed incredulously. "I worked for every penny I have. 2 jobs through college, eating ramen for dinner, no social life while Ryan was dropping out of schools you paid for." "Don't bring your brother into this," Mom snapped. "He's had challenges you couldn't understand." "Being lazy isn't a challenge," I muttered. Ryan stood up suddenly. "Always thought you were better than us, didn't you, Miss Perfect, with her fancy degree and big city job? Meanwhile, I'm stuck in that dead-end town taking care of Mom." "Taking care of her? You live in her house rent-free at 28. "I contribute," he shouted. "With what money?" I demanded. You haven't held a job for more than 3 months in your entire life. Mom rose to her feet, stepping between us. That's enough. This isn't what we came for. She turned to me, her expression softening into the manipulative look I knew all too well. Stephanie, sweetie, family helps family. That's just how it works. Mom, I send birthday and Christmas money. I've helped with emergency car repairs. But this, I gestured at the list, this is extortion. Her face hardened instantly. Family helps family, she repeated, or they're not family. The threat hung in the air between us. I can't give you this kind of money, I said finally. It's unreasonable. Unreasonable, she laughed bitterly. I'll tell you what's unreasonable. Using your own mother's social security number and address for student loans you never intended to pay back? I froze. What are you talking about? Don't play innocent. Those collection calls, they're looking for you, not me. Suddenly, a memory surfaced, Mom, asking me to sign some papers during my sophomore year of college. For financial aid, she'd said. I'd been rushing between classes and signed without reading carefully. You took out loans in my name, I whispered, the betrayal hitting me like a physical blow. I did what I had to do to keep our family afloat while you were off playing college girl, she said dismissively. Now it's time for you to do your part. My hands were shaking. Get out. Excuse me. Mom's eyes widened in feigned shock. Get out of my apartment. Now. Ryan stood, fists clenched. You ungrateful. We're staying at the Holiday Inn downtown, Mom interrupted, gathering her purse. We'll be here all weekend. Think carefully about your priorities, Stephanie. We're the only family you've got. As they walked toward the door, Mom turned back. Sunday night. I expect your answer by then. And Stephanie, remember, I know things about you that your fancy tech company might find very interesting. The door closed behind them with a quiet click that somehow felt more ominous than a slam. I collapsed onto the couch, mind racing. This wasn't just a request for money. It was the beginning of something much worse. By Saturday afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Mom and Ryan had launched a full-scale attack recruiting extended family members I barely spoke to anymore. From Mom, your silence speaks volumes about your character. From Ryan, Mom's crying because of you. Hope you're happy. From Aunt Jessica, your mother sacrificed everything for you. How can you be so heartless? I silenced my phone and tried to focus on cleaning my apartment, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. Around 3, a knock at my door made me freeze. I approached cautiously and checked the peephole. Cousin Mark stood there, shifting uncomfortably in his business casual attire. I hadn't seen him in at least 5 years. Reluctantly, I opened the door. Stephanie, he said, giving me an awkward half-hug. You look great. What are you doing here, Mark? He cleared his throat. Can I come in just for a minute? Against my better judgment, I let him inside. Look, he began, I know we haven't been close, but family is family. Did my mother send you? He hesitated. She's worried about you. Says you've changed, gotten cold. I haven't changed, I said quietly. I just finally set boundaries. Mark sighed. She needs help, Steph. Ryan, too. They're family. And where was this family concern when I was working 2 jobs through college? When I couldn't afford a plane ticket home for Christmas? When I was sick with pneumonia in my sophomore year and no one even called to check on me, my voice was rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Mark looked genuinely surprised. She said you refused to come home, that you were too busy with your new Seattle friends. The realization that Mom had been spinning narratives about me for years hit hard. I'd never been too busy. I'd been too broke. But she'd rather paint me as selfish than admit she offered no support. Mark, she's lying to you, I said bluntly. She's always lied. Before he could respond, my phone rang my workplace number. On a Saturday. With a sense of dread, I answered. Stephanie, it's Gerald. My manager's voice was tight with concern. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but there's a woman here claiming to be your mother. She's quite insistent about speaking with you, saying it's a family emergency. My blood ran cold. She came to my office. Security is with her now. She's quite emotional. I'm so sorry, Gerald. She doesn't have an emergency. She's trying to pressure me into giving her money. The silence on the other end spoke volumes. I'll come in, I said, resigned. Give me 20 minutes. I hung up and turned to Mark. You need to leave. Now. His eyes widened at my tone. What happened? My mother just showed up at my workplace, causing a scene. I grabbed my keys and jacket. This is what she does, Mark. She doesn't respect boundaries, she manipulates, and she destroys. Now I have to go damage control my professional reputation because of her. Mark followed me into the hallway looking shaken. I had no idea it was this bad. There's a lot you don't know, I said, locking my door. Like how she took my childhood savings money I earned babysitting for a year to buy Ryan a gaming console for Christmas. Or how every time I achieved something she found a way to undermine it. We rode the elevator down in silence. In the lobby, Mark hesitated. Stephanie, I think I need to hear your side of things. Properly. I don't have time right now. Later then. He handed me a business card. My cell's on there. When you're ready to talk, call me. I nodded curtly and rushed to my car. At the office, I found Mom being escorted out by security, dramatically dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "Oh, Stephanie," she cried upon seeing me. "Thank goodness, tell them who I am." Gerald stood nearby, his expression a mixture of concern and embarrassment. Several weekend workers had stopped to watch the spectacle. "This is indeed my mother," I confirmed to the security guard. "I'll handle it from here. I'm so sorry for the disruption." Gerald pulled me aside while Mom waited by the entrance. "Is everything okay, Stephanie? Do you need help?" The concern in his eyes nearly broke me. "Family drama," I said, trying to sound casual. "Nothing to worry about. If you need time off or support, just let me know," he said. "Your work is exemplary. We don't want to lose you." "Thank you, Gerald. It won't affect my performance, I promise." Outside, Mom dropped the tearful act immediately. "You had me thrown out by security, your own mother. You came to my workplace unannounced to cause a scene," I hissed. "Do you have any idea how unprofessional that makes me look?" She waved dismissively. "Your precious job. Is that all you care about?" "It's my livelihood. Family should be your priority." She straightened her jacket. "Speaking of family, did you know your Aunt Jessica had set up a college fund for you, nearly $10,000 by the time you graduated high school?" I stared at her. "What are you talking about? There was never any college fund." Mom's smile was cold. "Of course there was. Where do you think Ryan's first semester came from, and his car? You were already gone with your scholarship. He needed it more." The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Money that had been specifically saved for my education given to Ryan, who promptly dropped out. Money that could have spared me years of exhaustion and hardship. "You stole from me," I whispered. "Again and again you stole from me." "I redistributed family resources to where they were needed," she corrected. "And now it's your turn to contribute." "Get away from my workplace," I said, my voice shaking. "Don't contact my colleagues or my boss ever again." Or what her eyes narrowed. "I'm still your emergency contact on many things, Stephanie. I know your social security number, your birth date, your first address in Seattle. I could make things very difficult for you." The threat was unmistakable. "Sunday night," she reminded me. "We expect your answer then." She walked toward a waiting taxi head, held high as if she'd won something. Maybe she had. As I drove home, my phone pinged with a text from my best friend, Amy. "Emergency wine needed. You sounded stressed earlier." I pulled into my parking space and replied, "Please. It's worse than I thought." An hour later, curled on my couch with Amy, I poured out the whole story: the surprise visit, the financial demands, the workplace ambush. "That's not family," Amy said firmly. "That's extortion. She's threatening to tell my company I committed fraud," I said quietly. "And the worst part is she might have. Those papers she had me sign in college, what if they were loan applications in my name?" Amy set down her wine glass. "Then she committed fraud, not you. You need to check your credit report immediately." I grabbed my laptop and we pulled up my credit report together. There they were, 3 student loans in my name that I'd never applied for, all in default. "Oh my God," I whispered. "You need a lawyer," Amy said. "And the police." "She's my mother." "She's a criminal who's trying to blackmail you," Amy corrected. "Blood doesn't excuse that." As if on cue, my phone rang a local number I didn't recognize. "Stephanie Mitchell, this is Trevor from Pacific Northwest Bank's fraud department. We've noticed some unusual activity on your accounts we'd like to verify." My heart sank. The pressure campaign had just escalated to a whole new level. Sunday evening arrived with a weight of inevitability. I'd agreed to meet Mom and Ryan at Carmine's, an upscale Italian restaurant downtown Neutral Territory where they hopefully couldn't make a scene. I arrived early, selecting a table in a corner, with good visibility of the entrance. I'd barely slept since discovering the fraudulent loans, spending hours on the phone with credit bureaus, placing freezes on my credit, and documenting the identity theft. My lawyer friend Daniel had promised to meet me for breakfast Monday to discuss options. Until then, I needed to keep Mom talking without agreeing to her demands. They arrived 15 minutes late. Ryan strutting in, wearing a brand new leather jacket that probably cost more than a month's rent. Mom followed, draped in a cashmere sweater I'd never seen before, designer purse on her arm. For people in desperate financial need, they certainly didn't look the part. "Stephanie, darling," Mom air-kissed near my cheek. "What a lovely choice. Though the lighting is a bit harsh, isn't it? Not flattering for women our age." I bit back a retort as they settled in across from me. A waiter approached immediately. "We'll have a bottle of the Brunello di Montalcino," Mom said before I could speak. "The 2015, not the 2016. I raised an eyebrow at the $200 wine choice, but said nothing. Let them show their true colors. After ordering, Mom reached into her purse and extracted a manila envelope, sliding it across the table with theatrical precision. "We've prepared a proper agreement," she announced. "Simple terms. You provide the initial amounts we discussed, plus monthly support of $1,500 transferred on the 1st of each month. In exchange, we maintain family harmony." "Family harmony," I repeated flatly. "Is that what you call threatening me at my workplace?" Mom waved dismissively. "A misunderstanding. I was worried when you weren't answering your phone." Ryan smirked, thumbing through his own phone. "Check it out," he said, turning the screen toward Mom. "That Rolex I was telling you about is on sale." "Not now, honey," Mom murmured, before turning back to me with a practiced, concerned expression. "We're just trying to keep the family together, Stephanie, after everything we've been through." I studied her face, the familiar features that once represented safety in my childhood, now twisted with manipulation and entitlement. Around her neck gleamed a gold necklace I'd never seen before, a substantial pendant nestled at her collarbone. "That's new," I nodded toward the jewelry. Her hand flew to it defensively. "This old thing, I've had it for years." "No, you haven't," I said quietly. "The price tag is still attached to the back." Her cheeks flushed as she fumbled with the necklace, trying to locate and remove the evidence. Ryan shot her an annoyed glance. "Look," I leaned forward. "Let's be honest here. You're not struggling. You're not desperate. You just want a piece of my success because you think you're entitled to it." Ryan's face darkened. "We raised you, you ungrateful." "Actually, I raised myself," I cut him off. "And Mom raised you to believe the world owes you everything while teaching me it owed me nothing. Funny how that worked out, isn't it?" A waiter approached with the wine, but hesitated at the tension radiating from our table. As he began to retreat, another server intercepted him, whispering something and glancing at Ryan. The first waiter's eyes widened slightly before he approached again. "Mr. Mitchell," he said to Ryan, "I thought that was you. Will you be using the same card as last night? The machine had some trouble with it at the bar." Ryan's face went from angry to panic-stricken in an instant. I wasn't here last night," he stammered. The waiter frowned. "I'm sorry, sir. My mistake. You just look exactly like a gentleman who was at our bar until closing. He was quite memorable, especially after winning big at the Emerald Queen Casino and treating everyone to drinks." Mom's head snapped toward Ryan. Casino, you told me you were meeting job contacts. I sat back watching the implosion I hadn't even needed to orchestrate. It wasn't me, Ryan insisted unconvincingly. The gentleman last night had the same distinctive dragon tattoo on his forearm, the waiter added, gesturing to the ink visible beneath Ryan's rolled-up sleeve. A heavy silence descended on our table as the waiter discreetly retreated. So I said, finally, the desperate need for $5,000 for a business opportunity. Would that be to pay gambling debts, Ryan, or to try winning back what you've already lost? Ryan's face contorted with rage. You think you're so much better than me? No, I interrupted. I just work harder than you. Always have. Enough, Mom hissed. This isn't productive. Stephanie, we're still your family. We need your help regardless of circumstances. She slid the agreement closer to me. Sign it and we can put all this unpleasantness behind us. I picked up the document, made a show of reading it carefully, then tore it in half. No. No, Mom's voice rose dangerously. I will not give you money. I will not sign anything. And I will not allow you to manipulate, threaten, or blackmail me ever again. Ryan stood so abruptly, his chair toppled backward, drawing stares from nearby tables. You selfish bitch, after everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Ryan? Name one thing. When he sputtered without answering, I turned to Mom. Or you. When have you ever put my needs before your own? I gave birth to you, she nearly shouted. I kept you fed and clothed. The bare legal minimum, I agreed, keeping my voice steady, and then you stole my identity, took money specifically saved for my education, and are now trying to extort me. Mother of the Year, truly. Mom's face transformed, the mask of maternal concern dropping entirely to reveal raw, ugly resentment. You've always thought you were better than us. Always so independent, so smart, never needing anyone. It made me sick watching you succeed when Ryan struggled. The honesty, however, venomous, was almost refreshing after years of manipulation. I'm leaving now, I said, placing money on the table for my untouched appetizer. Don't contact me, my workplace, or my friends again. If you walk away from this table, Mom said, voice trembling with anger, you're walking away from this family forever. I met her gaze steadily. You stopped being my family the moment you decided to see me as a resource rather than a daughter. As I walked toward the exit, Ryan's voice boomed behind me. You'll regret this. We know where you live, where you work. This isn't over. Several diners were openly staring now, some recording with their phones. I kept walking head high, not stopping until I reached my car. Only then, hands shaking on the steering wheel, did the tears come, not for what I was losing, but for what I had never really had in the first place. A mother who loved me unconditionally, a brother who valued me, a family that was worthy of the name. My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. Hello, I answered warily. Stephanie, this is Benjamin, your uncle, your mother's brother. A voice I hadn't heard in years. We need to talk. She's planning something and you need to be prepared. Monday morning arrived with a sense of dread I couldn't shake. After Uncle Benjamin's cryptic warning, I'd barely slept, jumping at every sound outside my apartment. His words echoed in my mind. Your mother holds grudges forever and she fights dirty. Always has, even as a child. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit armor against whatever the day might bring. The elevator ride down to the parking garage felt interminable. When I finally reached my car, I found it untouched, but with a note tucked under the windshield wiper. Family business should stay private. Last chance. No signature needed. At the office, I tried to focus on code, but the constant checking of my email and phone for threats made concentration impossible. Around 11, my desk phone rang. Stephanie Mitchell, this is Heather from HR. Could you come to my office when you have a moment? My stomach dropped. I'll be right there. The walk to the HR suite felt like a march to execution. Heather, a typically warm woman in her 50s, greeted me with an uncharacteristically reserved expression. Please sit down, she said, closing the door behind me. We've received some concerning reports that we need to discuss. What kind of reports? My mouth was dry. She consulted a notepad. We received calls from someone claiming to be your mother, alleging that you've been embezzling company funds to pay off gambling debts. I nearly laughed from shock. That's absurd. There's more, Heather continued. She claims you falsified your educational credentials and that you've been selling company information to competitors. The realization hit me. Mom was trying to destroy my career. None of that is true, I said firmly. My mother is attempting to extort money from me, and this is her retaliation for my refusal. Heather's expressions softened slightly. I had a feeling something wasn't right. The accusations were too numerous and too serious, with no evidence provided. I took a deep breath. I can provide documentation of her attempts at extortion, including witnesses to her threatening behavior. I've also consulted a lawyer about her identity theft and fraud, using my personal information. Identity theft, Heather looked alarmed. For the next half hour, I laid out the whole sordid story. By the end, Heather's professional demeanor had given way to genuine concern. Stephanie, I'm so sorry you're dealing with this. From the company's perspective, we have no concerns about your performance or integrity. But I strongly suggest you take some personal time to handle this situation. I can't let her disrupt my work too, I protested. It's not a punishment, Heather assured me. It's protection for you and for the company. Take the week with pay. Handle what you need to handle. As I was gathering my things to leave, my colleague Jamal approached my desk. Hey, is everything okay? Some woman has been messaging people on the team through LinkedIn asking weird questions about you. My blood ran cold. What kind of questions? If you seem stressed lately, if you take long, unexplained absences, if you've been making large purchases, really invasive stuff. He frowned. I blocked her, but I thought you should know. Thank you, Jamal. My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. Look, he hesitated. I don't know what's going on, but if you need help, my sister Rebecca works for the Financial Crimes Unit at Seattle PD. She deals with identity theft cases all the time. I noted his sister's contact information gratefully, before heading home constantly checking my rearview mirror for signs of being followed. At my apartment building, the security guard waved me over. Miss Mitchell, just so you know, there was a woman here earlier asking for a key to your apartment. Said she was your mother and had forgotten her key. I told her we don't provide access without the resident present. Thank you, I said, feeling ill. She doesn't have permission to enter my apartment. Ever. Understood. We've made a note in the system. Upstairs, I unlocked my door cautiously, immediately sensing something was wrong. Nothing seemed out of place at first glance, but the air felt different, disturbed somehow. In my bedroom, the subtle signs became obvious. The closet door was ajar, drawers, not fully closed items on my dresser, slightly rearranged. Someone had been here looking through my things. With shaking hands, I checked my hiding spots. The fireproof box in my closet had been tampered with. Inside my passport was still there, but the folder with my financial documents was disheveled papers out of order. My laptop sat on the desk where I'd left it, but when I opened it, the login screen appeared immediately, not the hibernating programs I'd left. Someone had shut it down. I entered my password, heart pounding, and checked my email. The recently accessed log showed activity from when I'd been at work. As I was processing this violation, my phone chimed with a credit alert notification. Attempted new credit card application detected. They were trying to open accounts in my name. The reality of the situation hit me full force. This wasn't just emotional manipulation anymore. This was criminal activity that could destroy my financial future and reputation. My phone rang, an unknown number. Warily, I answered. Stephanie, this is Helen Watkins, your mother's neighbor. A vaguely familiar, elderly voice came through. I'm not sure if you remember me. Yes, from across the street, the blue house. That's right, dear. Listen, I don't want to get involved in family business, but I'm concerned. Your mother has been talking about you for months, planning this trip to Seattle, saying she was going to finally get what she deserved from you. My skin crawled. Months. This wasn't a spontaneous visit. Oh no, honey. She and Ryan have been planning this since at least March. I overheard them in the backyard. She was saying something about using your fancy job to solve their problems once and for all. Helen hesitated. The way they talked about you, it wasn't right. Not how family should talk about family. After thanking Helen for her courage in calling me, I sat in my violated apartment surrounded by evidence of how far my mother would go to control and punish me. My phone rang again, my lawyer friend Daniel. Stephanie, I've been reviewing everything you sent. This is serious. Your mother has committed multiple felonies, identity theft, fraud breaking, and entering. You need to go to the police now. She's my mother, I whispered the words, sounding hollow even to me. No, Daniel said firmly. Right now, she's a criminal who's actively trying to destroy your life. The fact that you share DNA doesn't give her the right to commit crimes against you. As we spoke, a new email notification appeared on my screen from my bank's fraud department, flagging suspicious attempts to change my account recovery information. The panic that had been building all day crystallized into something else: resolve. This had to stop. You're right, I told Daniel. I'll meet you at the police station in 30 minutes. I hung up and immediately called Jamal's sister Rebecca at the Financial Crimes Unit. As I was gathering my evidence to take to the station, a loud bang on my door made me jump. Through the peephole, I saw Ryan's face contorted with anger, clearly intoxicated. I know you're in there, he shouted, pounding again. Open the door, you ungrateful bitch! Mom's having a breakdown because of you! I backed away from the door, calling building security. While waiting for them to arrive, I recorded his continued threats and obscenities through the door. You think you've won, he slurred. We've got copies of everything, your birth certificate, your social security card, everything. If you won't help family willingly, we'll take what we need. When security finally arrived and removed him, I slumped against the wall, the full weight of the situation crushing me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I allowed myself to fully feel the devastation of having a mother and brother who saw me not as a person to love, but as a resource to exploit. I had always believed that with enough hard work, enough success, enough independence, I could somehow earn their respect, perhaps even their love. Now I understood the painful truth: nothing I could ever do would be enough, because the problem had never been me. It had always been them. As I gathered my evidence for the police, my hands steadied and my vision cleared. This wasn't just about protecting myself anymore. It was about finally breaking free from a lifetime of manipulation and abuse disguised as family obligation. I wouldn't just survive this. I would reclaim my life, my identity, and my right to define what family truly meant. The following morning found me sitting across from Daniel in his downtown law office, surrounded by document piles and empty coffee cups. After filing police reports the night before, we'd been working on a comprehensive protection strategy. First things first, Daniel said, tapping a notepad filled with his meticulous handwriting. The police have officially opened an identity theft investigation. With the evidence you've provided, especially those loan documents with your forged signatures, they have enough to pursue charges. I rubbed my temples, fighting the emotional and physical exhaustion. Will they arrest her? Eventually, possibly. But legal wheels turn slowly. In the meantime, we need to focus on immediate protection. He pushed a checklist toward me. We've frozen your credit-filed fraud alerts and changed all your passwords. Next, we need to secure your physical space. Within hours, I had a security technician installing cameras at my apartment and reinforcing my locks. My building management had been surprisingly supportive, adding my mother and Ryan to a no-entry list and providing security guards with their photos. At work, IT had locked down my accounts and implemented extra verification measures. Gerald, my manager, had been understanding beyond measure, arranging for me to work remotely until things settled. But the most unexpected support came from Jamal, who had been quietly gathering allies on my behalf. My sister wants to meet with you, he told me over lunch, at a cafe far from both my apartment and office. Rebecca thinks there might be more to this than you realize. Rebecca Yang was everything her brother wasn't. Where Jamal was soft-spoken and lanky, she was commanding, and compact with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. We met at her precinct where she'd secured a private room. "I've reviewed your case file," she said, without preamble, "and I've been doing some digging. Your mother and brother have patterns that suggest this isn't their first time running this scheme." She spread several documents across the table. "Credit reports for your cousins Sarah and Marcus show similar unauthorized accounts opened in their names, all traced back to addresses associated with your mother. Tax liens, defaulted, loans collection actions, all following the same methodology." I stared at the evidence, a sick feeling growing in my stomach. "They've done this to other family members." Rebecca nodded grimly. "And there's more. Your brother has accumulated substantial gambling debts at several casinos in the region, the kind of debts that attract dangerous attention when they go unpaid. Is that why they came after me now? Because Ryan owes money to the wrong people?" "It's likely part of the motivation," she confirmed. "The timing of their visit coincides with collection efforts from some particularly unsavory creditors." I thought back to the expensive clothes, the casual mention of Rolex watches, the way they'd lived far beyond any legitimate means. "They've been financing their lifestyle through fraud." "Serial fraud," Rebecca corrected. "And they've gotten quite sophisticated at it. But they made a critical mistake with you." "What's that?" "You fought back. Most victims, especially family, are too embarrassed or conflicted to report them." She leaned forward. "Your case could be the key to stopping them permanently." As I processed this information, my phone rang. Uncle Benjamin. "Stephanie, I'm in Seattle. Can we meet?" 2 hours later, I was sitting across from my mother's older brother in a quiet corner of a downtown hotel lobby. Though we'd been distant for years, his warm, hazel eyes, so unlike my mother's cold blue ones, held genuine concern. "I should have reached out sooner," he said, stirring his coffee absently. "But Diane cut me off years ago when I confronted her about stealing from our mother." I blinked in surprise. "She stole from Grandma Rose." Benjamin nodded sadly. "Retirement savings, jewelry, even her pain medication after her surgery. When I caught her, she turned the family against me, claiming I was the thief." His hands tightened around his cup. "Only Rose believed me, but by then she was too ill to do anything about it." The revelation hit me hard. "This goes back that far." "Farther," he sighed. "There were incidents when we were children. Money missing from our father's wallet. Items stolen from classmates that would appear in Diane's possession. She was always so convincing with her denials, her counter-accusations. She could cry on command, you know." I did know. "When you were born," Benjamin continued, "I hoped motherhood would change her. For a while it seemed to. But then Ryan was born." I finished. He nodded. "She always favored him, indulged him. I watched him becoming her mirror image, entitled manipulative. When I tried to maintain a relationship with you, to be some kind of positive influence, Diane blocked me at every turn." "I remember you sending birthday cards," I said softly. "They stopped coming when I was around 12. She returned them, unopened," he revealed. "Said I was trying to turn you against her." We talked for hours, Benjamin filling in gaps in my understanding of my family history. The picture that emerged was devastating generations of manipulation and theft, with my mother as the most prolific perpetrator. "I'm here now," he said firmly. "Whatever you need, I'll help." For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt something beyond fear and betrayal, the warm, steadying presence of genuine family support. When I returned to my apartment that evening, there was a message waiting from cousin Sarah, who had reached out after being contacted by Rebecca. "I should have warned you years ago," her voicemail said. "They did the same to me. I'm ready to talk if you are." Piece by piece, a network of allies was forming, people who had been similarly victimized, who understood what I was facing because they had faced it themselves. With Daniel's legal expertise, Rebecca's investigative skills, Benjamin's family insights, and now Sarah's parallel experience, I was no longer fighting alone. We had the beginnings of a counteroffensive. The next morning, Daniel and I met with a family court judge who granted an emergency restraining order against both my mother and Ryan. Rebecca coordinated with local police to ensure the orders were served immediately. Back at my apartment with new security measures in place, I began documenting everything, every interaction, every threat, every unauthorized access, creating a paper trail that would be impossible to dismiss. As I worked, a notification popped up on my laptop, an email from Gerald at work meeting tomorrow to discuss your project leadership role. Nothing to worry about, good news only. Call if you need anything. Despite everything, my career was still on track. My mother hadn't succeeded in destroying what I had built. That night I received a text from an unknown number. The restraining orders were served. Diane went ballistic. Be careful, she's planning something. Officer Williams. I forwarded the warning to Rebecca and Daniel, then checked my new security camera feeds. Nothing unusual outside my building. For the first time in days, I slept without nightmares, protected by locks, cameras, legal documents, and most importantly by people who truly had my best interests at heart. The battle was far from over, but for the first time I believed I could win it. The following week unfolded with a series of revelations that left me simultaneously vindicated and horrified. Rebecca's financial investigation had uncovered a network of fraud that extended far beyond what any of us had initially suspected. Your mother has at least 7 bank accounts under variations of her name, Rebecca explained, spreading documents across my dining table. She's been moving money between them to obscure the paper trail. Daniel whistled as he reviewed the findings. And look at these credit card statements. Designer clothes, luxury, vacations, jewelry, they're living like royalty on fraudulently obtained credit. Meanwhile, she's been telling family members she can barely afford her medication, I said, remembering the guilt trips. Rebecca nodded grimly. Classic manipulator tactic. Create sympathy while hiding excess. The most disturbing discovery came when Rebecca matched financial records with family contact information. There are identity theft markers on 3 other relatives besides you. Your cousin Sarah we know about, but there's also your Aunt Jessica and your grandfather's second wife Martha. Aunt Jessica, but she's been calling me, pressuring me to help Mom. Stockholm Syndrome, Daniel suggested. Sometimes victims defend their abusers, especially when family ties are involved. She may not even realize the extent of what's happened. Uncle Benjamin arrived later that afternoon with Sarah, who had flown in from Chicago. Meeting my cousin as an adult was surreal, her features so similar to mine, but her demeanor more guarded, wary. I should have warned you, were her first words, pulling me into a tight hug. When I saw your promotion announcement online, I knew they'd target you next, but I was too ashamed to reach out. Over dinner, Sarah shared her own experience. 3 years earlier, she'd landed a successful position at an accounting firm. Within months, Mom and Ryan had appeared spun tales of family hardship and eventually siphoned nearly $40,000 through emotional manipulation and fraud. When I finally cut them off, Aunt Diane told the entire family I had a drug problem and had stolen from her, Sarah said, pain evident in her voice. Most of them believed her. I was uninvited from Thanksgiving, Christmas, everything. The family's divided, Benjamin explained. Those who've been victims and know the truth, and those who are still under Diane's spell. As we strategized into the night, Rebecca received an urgent call from her office. They found something, she said after hanging up. Ryan's been making large cash deposits to an offshore account. The pattern suggests money laundering. For whom, I asked. Still investigating, but there are connections to known gambling operations. Your brother may be in even deeper trouble than we thought. The following morning brought another revelation. Rebecca had obtained a warrant to search my mother's financial records more thoroughly and discovered an appalling truth. Your grandmother's retirement checks are still being deposited somewhere, she explained. Despite her passing 3 years ago, Benjamin's face darkened. She's been collecting our mother's Social Security. That's a federal crime. One of many, Rebecca confirmed. We're building a case for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, Social Security fraud, and potential money laundering. Armed with this growing mountain of evidence, we implemented the next phase of our plan, a coordinated family conference call, organized by Benjamin, to finally expose the truth. The call was set for that evening, with key family members invited: Aunt Jessica, Uncle Thomas, cousins, and several elderly relatives who had been manipulated for years. As we prepared for the call, my security system alerted me to movement outside my apartment. The camera feed showed Mom and Ryan in the building, parking lot inspecting cars, specifically my car. They're going to damage it, I realized aloud already, dialing building security. Don't confront them, Rebecca warned. Let security handle it. We need them caught in the act. We watched through the security feed as Ryan pulled something from his pocket, a knife, and began moving toward my tire. Security arrived before he could act, and the confrontation that followed was captured in high definition, Ryan's belligerent denials. Mom's theatrical performance of the concerned mother, their hasty retreat when security mentioned. Police and cameras. Perfect evidence for the restraining order violation, Daniel said, already downloading the footage. And attempted property damage. The family conference call that evening was tense from the outset. Benjamin had strategically muted Mom and Ryan, initially allowing him to present the evidence without interruption. What I'm about to share will be difficult to hear, he began, but it's supported by police reports, financial records, and multiple witnesses. For the next hour, we methodically presented the evidence, bank statements, showing Mom's actual financial situation versus her claims of poverty, documentation of fraudulent accounts opened in family members' names, a testimony from Sarah about her experience, and finally proof that our grandmother's Social Security benefits were still being collected years after her death. When Mom and Ryan were finally unmuted, the explosion was immediate. "These are vicious lies," Mom shrieked. "Benjamin has always been jealous of me. Stephanie is mentally unstable. She's been seeing a therapist for years." I hadn't, but the lie flowed so effortlessly from her that for a second I almost questioned my own memory. And Sarah, Mom continued venomously, "Everyone knows about her problems with prescription medication." "Stop it, Diane." Aunt Jessica's voice cut through the chaos, surprisingly firm. "I've been checking my credit reports since Rebecca contacted me. I found accounts I never opened, credit cards I never applied for, all linked to your address." "You too, Jess," Mom's voice shifted instantly to wounded disbelief. "My own sister." "I didn't want to believe it," Jessica admitted. "But the evidence is overwhelming." One by one, family members spoke up, some confirming they'd found evidence of fraud in their own finances, others expressing shock and dismay at the revelations. Ryan, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly erupted. "You're all going to regret this. You have no idea who you're messing with." "Are you referring to your gambling debts to the Costello Group?" Rebecca interjected smoothly. "Because we're aware of those too." The stunned silence that followed told us everything. "This call is being recorded," Benjamin informed them. "Every threat, every admission, every denial, contrary to evidence. It will all be provided to the authorities." "We're family," Mom tried again, her voice cracking with what might have sounded like emotion to anyone who didn't know better. "Family stands together." "No," Aunt Diane Sarah spoke firmly. "Family doesn't steal from family. Family doesn't lie and manipulate and threaten. What you've done isn't family, it's criminal." The call ended shortly after, with most participants shocked into silence by the scope of the deception they'd uncovered. "That went better than expected," Daniel observed as we debriefed afterward. "Now comes the hard part," Rebecca warned. "They're cornered, and that makes them dangerous. We need to be prepared for escalation." She wasn't wrong. The very next morning, I received a call from my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel. "Stephanie, dear, there are people trying to get into your apartment. A woman claiming to be your mother, saying you're having a mental health crisis." I immediately called building security, and the police then checked my security cameras. There they were, Mom attempting to convince the maintenance worker to let her in for an emergency, Ryan lurking behind her, looking agitated. The footage captured everything: Mom's tearful performance, Ryan's increasingly aggressive behavior when denied entry, and finally Ryan attempting to force the door before security arrived. When police showed up minutes later, they were arrested on the spot for violating the restraining order. The sense of validation was overwhelming. For perhaps the first time in my life, my mother's manipulations had failed. The truth had prevailed. This is just the beginning, Rebecca cautioned, as we watched the police car drive away with Mom and Ryan in the back seat. They'll be out on bail soon. But now we have documentation of escalating behavior, restraining order violations, and attempted breaking and entering. Daniel nodded in agreement. The case against them grows stronger by the day. Soon, the decision to prosecute won't be yours anymore. The state will take over based on the evidence. That evening, as I sat with Benjamin, Sarah, and my new support network, I realized something profound had shifted inside me. The guilt and obligation that had been instilled since childhood had finally broken their hold. I keep waiting to feel bad about this, I admitted. About my own mother facing criminal charges. But all I feel is relief. That's because you're finally free, Benjamin said gently. Free from the manipulation, the guilt, the constant fear of never being enough. Sarah reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Welcome to the other side, cousin. It gets better from here. Looking around at these people, my true family bound not by obligation but by mutual respect and support, I finally believed her. 2 weeks later, I sat in family court watching my mother and brother enter with their attorney. Mom had somehow transformed herself again, gone were the designer clothes, and flashy jewelry replaced by a modest gray dress and minimal makeup. She looked smaller, somehow fragile. Ryan, by contrast, appeared disheveled and twitchy, his eyes constantly scanning the room. Their lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named Lawrence Bentley, had a reputation for aggressive tactics. He approached Daniel before proceedings began. There's still time to work this out privately, he suggested with an insincere smile. Family disputes should remain family matters. This stopped being a family dispute when they committed multiple felonies, Daniel replied coolly. But nice try. The restraining order hearing began with Judge Martinez, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewing the case files. Behind me sat a surprising show of support. Uncle Benjamin and Sarah, of course, but also Aunt Jessica, Cousin Mark, my neighbor Mrs. Patel, my colleague Jamal, and even Helen Watkins, who had flown in from Minnesota to testify about what she had overheard. Mom kept attempting to catch my eye, alternating between wounded looks and subtle glares. I focused instead on the judge, refusing to engage in the emotional manipulation. My testimony came first, Daniel guiding me through a chronological account of the events from the surprise visit to the financial demands, the workplace harassment, the break-in, the identity theft, and finally the attempts to enter my apartment despite the emergency restraining order. Throughout, I presented documentation, text messages, emails, financial records, security footage, police reports. A methodical, irrefutable timeline of escalating harassment and criminal activity. When cross-examination began, Bentley immediately went on the attack. Miss Mitchell, isn't it true that you've always been jealous of your brother's close relationship with your mother? Objection, Daniel interrupted. Argumentative and irrelevant to the restraining order. Sustained Judge Martinez agreed. Mr. Bentley, stick to the facts of the case. Bentley pivoted. Miss Mitchell, you've made quite a successful life for yourself, haven't you? Nice apartment, prestigious job, comfortable salary. Yet you begrudge your struggling family any financial assistance. I've provided financial help many times over the years, I replied evenly. What I refused was extortion and fraud. Extortion is a serious accusation. Yes, it is, I agreed. That's why the police are investigating it separately from this hearing. Bentley's questions grew increasingly desperate as he attempted to paint me as cold, ungrateful, and mentally unstable. Each attempt fell flat against the mountain of evidence and my calm responses. When Mom took the stand, she delivered the performance of a lifetime, tears flowing on cue, as she described her desperate worry about my deteriorating mental state and how she had only come to Seattle out of maternal concern. Stephanie has always been difficult, she told the court, dabbing at her eyes, prone to exaggeration and paranoia. When I saw signs of her becoming increasingly unstable online, I had to intervene. That's what mothers do. And the financial demands documented in evidence, Daniel asked during cross-examination. Suggestions, Mom corrected. for how she might help family while also getting the professional help she clearly needs. And breaking into her apartment, "I have a key," Mom claimed. "She gave it to me years ago. I was concerned when she wasn't answering her phone. Then why did building security catch you trying to convince maintenance to let you in?" "A misunderstanding," she insisted. When Ryan took the stand, the facade crumbled entirely. Unlike my mother, he lacked her polished ability to lie convincingly under pressure. "Yeah, we asked for money," he admitted when pressed. "She owes us. Do you know how much it cost to raise her, all those years of food and clothes and stuff? She's making bank now and won't even help her own mother. It's disgusting." "Did you threaten Miss Mitchell at her workplace?" "I was just trying to talk some sense into her." "Did you attempt to damage her vehicle?" "No, I was just looking at it." "With a knife in your hand?" "For protection, this neighborhood is sketchy." As Ryan's testimony unraveled, I noticed something strange happening at the defense table. Bentley was reviewing documents, his expression growing increasingly concerned. He whispered something to my mother, whose face went ashen. When court recessed briefly, Daniel returned from a conversation with Bentley, looking stunned. "He's withdrawing as their counsel," Daniel informed me. "Apparently your mother told him the loans in your name were authorized by you. He just received the evidence proving they weren't. He's quitting mid-hearing. He's ethically required to. He can't continue representing clients who lied to him about material facts, especially when those facts involve criminal activity." When court resumed, Bentley indeed announced his withdrawal, leaving Mom and Ryan to represent themselves for the remainder of the hearing. Without legal guidance, Ryan's frustration boiled over. "This is all a setup," he shouted. "She's always been the favorite with everyone. Poor little Stephanie, so smart, so hardworking, while I'm just the screw-up." Mr. Mitchell, Judge Martinez warned, "Control yourself, or you'll be held in contempt." "Contempt? You want to see contempt? I'll show you contempt." Ryan's face contorted with rage. "You think this is over? We know people. We have connections. When we're done with her, she'll wish she'd just given us the money." Security officers moved toward him immediately as Mom tried desperately to silence him. "Ryan, stop, you're making it worse." But he was beyond reason. "Tell them, Mom. Tell them what we really came to Seattle for. Tell them about the plans to empty her accounts and sell her identity. Tell them what you did to Grandma Rose." The courtroom fell silent as Ryan's outburst revealed far more than any testimony could have. Judge Martinez's decision was swift and unequivocal. Permanent restraining orders granted with enhanced provisions due to the demonstrated threat level. Mom and Ryan were ordered to stay at least 500 feet from me, my home and my workplace, with no contact whatsoever permitted directly or through third parties. As they were escorted from the courtroom, Mom looked back at me one last time. "You were never really my daughter anyway," she hissed venom, replacing the tears that had flowed so convincingly earlier. "No daughter of mine would do this to her own mother." In that moment, something crystallized within me, the realization that her version of motherhood had always been conditional, transactional, ultimately hollow. "You're right," I replied, my voice steady. "No daughter should have to do this. No mother should make it necessary." Outside the courthouse, surrounded by my real support system, I breathed deeply for what felt like the first time in months. The battle wasn't over, criminal charges were still pending, and the emotional aftermath would take years to fully process, but a critical corner had been turned. "What happens now?" I asked Rebecca, who had been sitting in the back of the courtroom. "Now the criminal justice system takes over," she explained. "With today's admissions and the evidence we've gathered, the prosecutors have a solid case for multiple felony charges." Later that evening, as we gathered at Benjamin's hotel suite to decompress, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously. "Stephanie, this is Margaret, your mother's sister." A voice I'd never heard before. "I've stayed out of family matters for years after Diane and I had a falling out, but Benjamin reached out to me about what's happening." "I didn't even know my mother had another sister," I admitted. "There's a lot you don't know," Margaret said softly. "About your mother, about your family history. Things that might help you understand, not excuse, but understand how she became who she is." "I'm listening," I said, stepping onto the hotel balcony for privacy. What Margaret shared over the next hour revealed generations of dysfunction. I'd never imagined a grandmother with narcissistic tendencies who pitted her daughters against each other. A grandfather who disappeared for years at a time. Patterns of favorites and scapegoats repeated across generations. Your mother was the golden child until she wasn't, Margaret explained. When she disappointed our parents by getting pregnant with you, she was cast aside. I think in her mind she's been trying to regain that pedestal ever since using Ryan as her proxy for the approval she lost. That explains things, but it doesn't excuse them, I said. No, it doesn't, Margaret agreed. Which is why I testified against her 20 years ago when she stole my identity the first time. That's why we haven't spoken since. Another victim? Another piece of the puzzle? Would you be willing to provide a statement to the prosecutors? I asked. I already have, she replied. It's time this cycle ended, Stephanie. For good. When I rejoined the others, I carried both the weight of this new understanding and the lightness of knowing that despite everything, I had broken free of the toxic patterns that had claimed so many in my family before me. Uncle Benjamin raised his glass in a toast. To ending cycles, he said, somehow knowing exactly what I needed to hear, and to building something better in their place. I clinked my glass against his, against Sarah's, against the glasses of everyone who had stood by me through this ordeal. To family, I amended. The kind we choose, not the kind we inherit. 6 months after the courtroom confrontation, I sat across from Dr. Lena Kim watching autumn leaves swirl outside her office window. Our weekly therapy sessions had become an anchor in my healing process. How are you feeling about Thanksgiving next week? She asked. Nervous, I admitted. It's the first major holiday I'll be celebrating without my mother and Ryan. Even though our relationship was toxic, there's still this strange emptiness. Dr. Kim nodded. That's completely normal. We can mourn the loss of harmful relationships, or more accurately mourn the healthy relationships we never had. The past 6 months had been a journey of processing and rebuilding. After the restraining order, hearing criminal proceedings had moved forward swiftly. The evidence was simply too overwhelming for any reasonable defense. My mother had ultimately accepted a plea deal, 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation for identity theft, fraud, Social Security fraud, and elder financial abuse. Ryan had received 18 months for his lesser but still significant role with mandatory gambling addiction treatment as part of his sentence. I hadn't attended the sentencing. By then, I'd said all I needed to say and heard all I needed to hear. I've been journaling like you suggested, I told Dr. Kim. About my childhood memories, trying to identify the manipulation I couldn't see then. And what have you discovered? That the way I was raised wasn't normal or healthy. That working multiple jobs as a teenager while Ryan did nothing wasn't building character. It was exploitation. That being told I was selfish for having boundaries wasn't truth, it was control. Working through these revelations had been painful but necessary. Each session, each journal entry, each conversation with others who had survived similar family dynamics helped me rebuild my understanding of what family should be. Professionally, things had stabilized as well. After taking a month of personal leave to focus on my recovery and the legal proceedings, I had returned to work with a new sense of confidence. Gerald had made good on his promise. I now led a team of developers on a major project, my career trajectory back on track despite my mother's attempts to derail it. My apartment no longer felt violated after a thorough cleaning rearrangement of furniture and new security system. I'd even adopted a cat, a quiet gray tabby named Edison, who had quickly become my constant companion. I got the promotion, I told Dr. Kim, unable to keep a small smile from forming. Senior team lead. Congratulations, that's wonderful news. And I've decided to accept it, I continued. For a while, I was considering turning it down, worried that pursuing career success was somehow playing into my mother's narrative that I care more about work than people. What changed your mind? I realized I was still letting her influence my decisions. Taking or refusing the promotion because of what she might think. Either way, she was still controlling me. I straightened in my chair. I'm taking it because I earned it and because I want it. My reasons, no one else's. After my session, I stopped by Uncle Benjamin and Aunt Julia's new condo. They had relocated to Seattle 3 months ago, partly to be closer to me and partly because Benjamin had accepted a teaching position at a local university. Just in time, Aunt Julia called from the kitchen as I entered. I need a taste tester for my cranberry sauce. Too sweet, not sweet enough. The apartment smelled of cinnamon and roasting vegetables preparations for next week's Thanksgiving feast already underway. Benjamin sat at the dining table, glasses perched on his nose as he grated papers. Perfect balance, I declared after sampling the sauce. Though I'm hardly an objective judge, I'd eat anything you cook. Flattery will get you everywhere, Julia laughed, returning to her recipe testing. Benjamin looked up from his papers. Good session. Productive. I nodded. We talked about the holidays, about moving forward. He smiled knowingly. Big steps. Indeed they were. This would be the first Thanksgiving of my adult life that wasn't shadowed by dread of family obligation or guilt. Instead, we were creating something new, a gathering of people who genuinely cared for each other. Sarah and her husband were flying in from Chicago. Jamal and his sister Rebecca would join us, along with Daniel and his partner. Even Margaret, my mother's estranged sister, had accepted an invitation. A family built on choice rather than blood alone. Letter came for you, Benjamin mentioned, pushing an envelope across the table. From the Victim Compensation Fund. I opened it to find notification that my application had been approved financial assistance to help cover the therapy costs and security expenses resulting from my mother's crimes. This feels like closure somehow, I said, showing him the letter. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner in my apartment with Edison weaving between my legs, my phone rang with a Minnesota area code. Hello? Stephanie, it's Helen Watkins, my mother's former neighbor. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all, I assured her. How are you? I'm well, dear. I just wanted you to know they've listed your mother's house for sale. The real estate agent has been clearing things out. I felt a momentary pang. The house I'd grown up in with all its complicated memories would soon belong to someone else. She found something you might want, Helen continued. A box in the attic with your name on it. School projects, report cards, some photographs. Things from when you were little. My throat tightened unexpectedly. She kept those. The agent can ship them to you if you'd like. Or dispose of them, it's entirely your choice. After a moment's reflection, I gave Helen my address. Whatever complicated feelings I had about my mother, these were pieces of my history. Perhaps they belonged in my healing journey, too. The following Sunday, I hosted a small dinner gathering a practice run for Thanksgiving. I joked, though, really it was a celebration of the family we were building. As we sat around my dining table, Benjamin and Julia, Sarah and her husband, Jamal, Rebecca, and Daniel, I looked at each face and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with obligation or manipulation. I'd like to propose a toast, I said, raising my glass. To all of you who showed me what family really means. Not guilt or obligation or control, but respect and support and love. To family, they echoed, glasses clinking. Later, as people lingered over coffee and dessert, Sarah pulled me aside onto the balcony. I have something to tell you, she said, a nervous smile playing on her lips. We're expecting a little girl due in April. Sarah, that's wonderful, I hugged her tightly. We want you to be her godmother, she continued. To help us make sure she grows up knowing what healthy family looks like, what healthy love feels like. Tears pricked at my eyes. I'd be honored. As the evening wound down and guests departed with leftovers and hugs, I stood in my doorway watching them go, struck by how full my life had become since letting go of the toxic connections that had drained me for so long. The box from my childhood home arrived the following day. Construction paper, art projects, certificates of achievement, photographs of a smiling little girl with hopes and dreams still intact. At the very bottom lay a small, handwritten note in my mother's distinctive script. Stephanie's special things. She's going to be somebody important someday. I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by fragments of a past I was still reconciling, and realized that healing wouldn't be linear. There would always be complexities, contradictions in how I felt about my mother, the woman who had both given me life and tried to control it, who had kept my childhood treasures while simultaneously betraying my adult trust. But I was no longer defined by that relationship. I had built something stronger, healthier, a life filled with people who valued me not for what I could give them, but simply for who I was. As I gathered the childhood mementos into a new box, one I would keep, I felt not just peace, but possibility. The cycle of manipulation and control that had claimed so many in my family had finally been broken. And in its place, something beautiful was growing. I finally understood that family isn't about sharing blood, it's about sharing respect. And in that moment, surrounded by people who truly valued me, I realized I wasn't just surviving without my mother and brother, I was finally thriving. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever experienced toxic family dynamics or had to set difficult boundaries with loved ones, I'd love to hear about your journey in the comments below. Was there a moment when you realized that true family is defined by love and respect, not obligation? Don't forget to like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to choose their own well-being. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more healing than the family we're born into. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.